I am collecting rose seeds out of ripe rose hips, and I'm doing this because I grow roses from seed, and it's a huge passion of mine, and I want to be able to teach as many people as possible that may be interested in hybridizing or growing roses from seed. So that's what this video is going to be about. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, and if you come into the halfway point, I'm going to do one rose hip, show you the whole entire process, and then I intend on publishing this as a video to see on YouTube. So anybody can watch even after. So the first thing is I want to show you how rose hips are actually made. It's important to know where you're getting the rose hips from and how they are made and their whole purpose. So I have this rose here. It is Sunset Horizon, beautiful rose. But I brought it in here to show you what the very beginning of a rose hip is. So at the very base of, see if I can get that in there. So you can see right there is a little ball or a little nub, right, in green. That is what eventually will turn into a rose hip if the rose is successfully pollinated. Now the inside of the rose has all the reproductive parts. It has the stamens, which has the pollen, and it has the stigma, which accepts the pollen. And when it's pollinated, the seeds start developing and start growing down below at the base. And as the seeds start maturing and developing and getting larger, the rose hip will start swelling and growing in size to accommodate the seeds inside. And it can take about 3 to 4 months, depends on the variety of the rose, but about 3 to 4 months on average for rose hips to completely ripen. And this is a ripe rose hip here. They will usually be either like an orange or a red. Sometimes they can be fancier colors like purple or black, just depends on the variety of the rose. And they can be very different sizes and shapes. But the best way to tell is when they have changed color. And I like to think of it like an apple. So if you go to the grocery store and you're getting apples, then when you feel them, they're going to be, hey, how are you, Marco? Welcome in. But when you pick up an apple, feel free to ask any questions, anybody at any time. I'm just going through the process of getting rose seeds out of a rose hip. And I'll be storing them and start growing them here in a couple months, start that process. But if you feel an apple at a grocery store, it kind of has that fleshy feel to it. Rose hips are the same. They're not going to be rock hard, but they're not so soft to where your fingers go right through it, right? So I like to take scissors. You can use scissors, you can use a knife, but I cut into the hip, and you do not have to worry about cutting the rose seeds. Rose seeds are very hard, and they will move out of the way of the blade. So I just cut enough into it to where I'm able to pull it apart. And this is what the inside of a rose hip looks like. And thank you for the like. So inside, you can see the flesh, you can see the seeds, which there's a lot of seeds in here, and you can also see quite a bit of fibers. Now, you do have to be careful with the fibers because it's like fiberglass, right? They can cause irritation to the skin. So if you do have sensitive skin, I would suggest at this point to wear gloves. Fortunately for me, I don't have that problem. But I did not know that until after I'd started doing it. So I lucked out there. So at this point, I'm getting the rose seeds out, and I'm just going to kind of pull apart the rose hip as I get the seeds. And you can see the seeds there. Now, rose hips can either have as little as 1 seed per hip, and I have seen as many as 40 seeds from a single rose hip. And that depends on the variety of the rose, and it depends on how well that rose was pollinated. So I'm just picking them out And like I said before, if you have sensitive skin, you do want to wear gloves, because if you can see like little fibers on my finger. So that can cause skin irritation for a lot of people. So something to be careful about. And halfway done, and it looks like I'm going to end up with about 20 seeds out of this one. So it's a larger hip, but the seeds are larger as well. Just because the hip is large doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a lot of seeds. I have had several seeds come from very small hips, and the seeds are very small. So I got all the rose seeds out, and I like to put them in a metal strainer. So like I said before, there's the hip flesh, there is fibers on the seed, and the fibers will actually inhibit your seed from actually germinating. So it's important for us to kind of wash all of that stuff off of the seeds. So I put it in a metal strainer, and I'm at my kitchen sink, and I'm going to run water over the seeds, and while I'm running it over, I'm going to scrub the seeds against the metal strainer. It kind of acts like a little bit of like a sandpaper, right? So, and like I said, with cutting into them, the seeds are very hard, so you don't have to worry about damaging the seed. But as I run water underneath the seed, I'm just scrubbing them against the metal strainer, and it's getting off all of that flesh. The water is going to rinse all the fibers and loose flesh off from the seed, and I'm going to be left with clean seeds. And see, this doesn't take long. I am just about finished with the seeds. So after that, I grab a cup, and I'm going to fill it with water. Just like so. These seeds that are washed, I'm going to drop in, put that in there. I'm going to drop the seeds in the glass of water. Now, the seeds are going to do one of two things. They are either going to float or they are going to sink. General rule of thumb is that seeds that float are going to be less likely to germinate versus the seeds that sink. Not always the case. So if you are working with roses for the first time from a certain variety and their seeds, I always suggest keeping the seeds, both seeds that float and sink, but keep them separated so when you plant them, you can see the difference in germination rate between the seeds that sink versus the seeds that float. And then that way, if you do notice that there's a big difference, or the seeds that floated did not germinate at all or very little, then going forward the next year that you're getting seeds from that particular variety, you can be confident and comfortable in throwing those seeds away. But you don't know until you try, right? So in this cup here, I have 3 seeds that floated, and they are easy to get out because they are floating. Don't know if you can see them. So this is a rose, the hips, from a variety that I hybridized myself. And this was the first year that it flowered. So I have not grown seeds from this variety. I'm hoping that it makes a good seed parent, because I would like to hybridize this. So I am keeping all of the seeds that float as well, but I'm just keeping them separated. And one thing that I really like with using the strainer is seeds that sink, as you can see there. I just put it back in the strainer, the seeds are there, and then I can take them out. So the next step with rose seeds is stratification, and that's just pretty much a really fancy term of the seeds needing to go through a winter period, right? So if rose seeds do not feel like they have gone through a winter, they will not germinate. And a lot of people that have expressed concerns about, they planted rose seeds and they have not, they didn't get any that germinated. A really common reason is because the seeds were not stratified. They did not put their seeds through a winter period during any time. And the seeds could very well be viable, but they're just waiting for that for a winter. And once it starts warming up and they feel like they're warming up, they feel like they've gone out of a winter and they can start germinating and growing at the beginning of spring, and they have the whole entire growing season to get large and mature enough to be able to survive the winter temperatures, their first winter of their life. So when you stratify, you put them in between moist paper towels. Some people do vermiculite, just depends on what works best for you. I like to use paper towels, just a little bit easier. And you put them in a moist paper towel, and you put them in a Ziploc baggie, and you put them in the refrigerator, not the freezer. It's too cold. They don't need to be frozen, but you know, a refrigerator temperature, and you leave them in the refrigerator for 3 months for the period of a winter. After that 3 months, then you can take the seeds out, and then you can plant them in a warmer condition, and then they will start germinating. So if I start stratifying now, it's the very end of September. If I start stratifying now, then I would need to plant the seeds at the very end of December. And I do not have enough space. I'm expecting to get about 10 to 11,000 seeds. I don't have enough space in my house to to grow that many seeds, right? So I am drying these seeds, and I'm going to store them for a couple of months before I start stratifying. So I put the seeds, so this is the pile of the seeds that floated, and this is the pile of the seeds that sank. I've done a couple more before starting this. And I'm going to put another paper towel over on top, and I'm going to let them dry completely and for a couple of days. And then when they're dry, then I'm going to store them. I have this baggie of other seeds I've done. There are well over 1,000 seeds in this baggie. I've been very busy lately. But these are all dry, and they are going to stay in here for a couple of months before I start stratifying them. So they will be fine in this, just as long as I keep it in a dry, cool area. So, but I could start stratifying the seeds right away, but I just don't have the space, and I was kind of vetoed on using the house as a greenhouse. So, so that is the process of gathering seeds from rose hips. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And I'm going to post this video or this live as a video so anybody can see it afterwards. So if you do see this as a video outside of the live, feel free to leave a comment and I will get back to you. Have fun with your roses.